Who are you and what's your mission?
So that's a good question because for me, I go by many things and I have many different identities and I've been many different things to many different people through my life. But if I had to summarize who I once would want to be to people is someone that's reliable, dependable, someone that can help people. And who I would be to them is someone there for them in the greatest need of time. Someone there for them that can be dependable. And someone there for them that is there to give, is there to give back what I once had. And ultimately, can you repeat what the second question? Because
Of course. So what is your mission?
what's my mission? That's a good question. So my mission was many different things. Since I've had many ego deaths, my mission has changed multiple times, but still the same heart behind the mission. Like, there's still Jiyan, but Jiyan's now changed. It's now, rather than just myself, where it was realize my ultimate potential, it's now building mighty men and women of valor. Now I care about more than just myself, because eventually you're going to die. Eventually, there's only so long you can live, and your children, as well as other people's children, will be the next generations. And what you leave behind for them is what's going to prevail. We can all disagree on different points of view on, okay, like, I believe in astrology, I believe in the super duper wizard man that made everything, came into the cosmos. We've got all our different beliefs, but we've also got the reality. The reality is we're all sharing this world, we're all here in this world, and we all actually need each other. So my purpose now is to build mighty men and women of valor. And who I am is the man that's going to be leading the charge, the person that's willing to do what needs to be done.
All right, amazing. Yeah, it's amazing to know that's who you are and that's what you want to do. But I'd like to know, what were you like before all this? What was your childhood like?
That's a very interesting question. So, for me, I was born in Chester Hospital, so I was born in Chester. I like to say a little fun joke for this sake is I was born and raised in Chester Zoo with the lions and the apes, so you know, like, I used to have long hair. I can show you the driver's license. I'm serious. If you do ask, shows the driver's license. So I was born in Chester Hospital. And then for 2 years, I was with my mum and dad. Their backgrounds is my mum, she's fully English. So she was born in a holiday in South Africa. So she wasn't born in South Africa on purpose. She was born on the holidays. So my grandma at the time with my granddad, that she was therefore born on the holiday. And she mainly lived in Warrington, and she did lots of things. She travelled the world, she did all these kind of things. And then my dad, at the time, he is from Northern Cyprus, and he's Kurdish. So with Kurdish people, like, think of English as every single town speaks a different version of English. So every single town has a different way of saying things. If you go to Nottinghamshire, if you go to Scotland or Wales, they all have different versions of English. So Kurdish is the same. So you have 20 different dialects, and I'm still freaking learning it. So he's Kurdish, and he came to the UK as like one of the first out of his family that came to the UK. So he met my mum. In their 20s, they conceived me, and they split when I was about 20, no, not 20, when I was 2, and in terms of that, then I moved from Wales, so Cardiff, Wales, and then we moved to Warrington at the time. So with Warrington, it was originally with my granddad, and so I not only at a very young age became a single parent or mother household, but it was already uniquely different because then I had my first genuine male role model experience, my granddad, and he was the one that inspired both me and my mum, if I'm honest. He was the one that pushed us to do more in life. And originally with him, he only had 6 months to live, but he went on to live 20 years with cancer. So for him, he was on the verge of going, and he died when I was 3. So for me, I had in the back of my mind, like I'm not going to let him or any others down. And then when I was about 5, I was diagnosed with Asperger's, so a form of autism. So if I have to summarize it to everyone listening, it's like a video game character. You have certain levels and stats that you start the game as. So in my case, how it applied, because everyone's different, I'm not an Albert Einstein, but all the stats, you're starting on a harder difficulty versus everyone else. That's the best way to summarize it. And because there wasn't anything during that time, everyone had this frame and this assumption or this way of seeing things who were autism. So for me, everyone, including myself, was, if you could be a milkman driver, that would be the best you could be. So for the rest of your life, in most cases, people had that assumption. They almost like, they didn't expect very much out of me, if not very little. So it was one of those things. And then what happened was, when I got to about 8, and this was when my mum and stepdad married, I had the option to go to a normal primary school, so my original primary school, because I left when I was about reception. So for me, during that time, I didn't even believe that I could do all that, and I didn't even believe I could go into normal primary school, but I did it despite it. Like, I didn't even believe in it. But because there was more to lose where I was to where I became, and I know I'm talking a lot, but hang on, it's all going to make sense very soon. So, because it was worse to be where I was versus the other, then you compound all the other things. Then you compound single mum household for most of my life at that point, and not just any single mum household. It was like very rare where my mum took on both roles, and I didn't have very many role models growing up. It was just me and my grandma for the most part. So you couple all these frames and the autism frame, and then I got into a normal primary school with a TA. So from there, the frames, everything set, I defeated what was considered impossible. So for my rest of my life, from that childhood, almost like the Batman experience, everything that was impossible was now possible. I now had a framework from my mum where I never had a terminology called giving up. So we complete things until thingy. I was an underdog, and I had all these things stacked against me, and I still prevailed. And so my childhood is unique in the sense that I did everything with all the odds against me. So that would probably be a summary of my childhood.
Yeah, wow, amazing answer. Obviously they're talking about Asperger's and about how it was a struggle for you to get into schools and stuff like that. But were there any other problems or adversities that you overcame in your childhood, and even, beyond your childhood, and how did you overcome them?
Well, if I have to summarize adversity, my life is adversity. And as you can see here, if you wanted to talk about adversity, here's a dislocated thingy. I can tell you a story behind every single one of these things. My fight's adversity. So for this one over here, it was my fourth fight I was preparing for halfway through a training camp. And I was throwing the dodgeball with a big bowling will know this. If you're watching bowling, Merry Christmas. But for bowling, me and him were throwing the dodgeball at each other. I'm going to tell him to watch this interview, so basically watch bowling. We were both throwing the dodgeball at each other, catching the dodgeballs. And he's a heavyweight, he's a gigantic guy. And I'm too egotistical in some of the cases, so we refused to stop catching and just threw each other harder each time. So it got to the point where it was so hard, I just half-heartedly catched it and dislocated the pinky. And so what I had to do was go to A&E, and they decided to do a poor job, as you can see. They put it on like this, that's as much you can stretch it out. And so everyone was like, you can't train. I was like, well, I've got a fight in 2 months. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to training. So I went to training the next day, and I became almost like the Paralympic champion, disability champion. So already with the autism, I decided to switch my opposite stance and only have southpaw with one lead hand. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to become Paralympic champion if this works out. And funny enough, the triumph of that story is when I healed enough when I could fight my fourth fight. You can see this on my YouTube channel. And I fought the full fight and I KO'd the guy in under 40 seconds. So it was one of the most biggest adversities and triumphs. Another one is my nose. If you look up, it's slanted. So it was one of my first sparring sessions, or a couple sparring sessions. Tyler know this because Tyler was the one that was sparring. He's a smaller guy and he's in southpaw. And we were sparring. He's very, very technical. So I was to the point where I was getting absolutely pieced up. And one of the things was I was walking forward and he timed me with an uppercut and it literally spat out all blood and everything. And so I don't really panic. I'm like, all right, healthy character development. So I quickly ran to the freaking bathroom, washed my nose, so the blood stopped doing it after a while. And then I was like, all right, sparring gear back on, and continued the fight. So if I have to, and I can do more adversities, it's not just fighting, but my life is a definition of adversities. And I don't have any pity for myself for that. It's what made me into the man I am today. So I'm more than happy to talk about other things outside of fighting. So if you want any more advice or questions on that, I'm more than happy to explain.
Of course, and that's a brilliant segue to the next question. We're going to come away from boxing for a bit. I'm going to talk about your faith. I'm aware that your faith is very important to you and it's very big in your life. Could you explain and just tell people what your faith has done for you and how it's helped you?
My faith, how I came to my faith was actually fighting, funny enough. Many people come to faith via many different ways. But the thing that's true, or the root cause of it, is that I have tried every single thing in the world. When you get to a stage where you tried everything and you're still having this empty void that can't be filled by anything, or let's say you've survived things, that it's like, there's no answer of how I survived. It's like these fights, like any one of those punches at the right time, right place could end my existence. And ultimately, it was at a pivotal point where I had such a massive ego death, where everything that I come to rely on and value went down the toilet. So I came to faith, I believe it's July, and I do have my baptism video, but ever since then, it's the things that gets written about in the Bible, the character, the different things like that. I've been seeing it come to life, to the point where it's not a coincidence now, to the point where, okay, this is happening, that's happening, this is happening, and you just see stacked of these things. And sometimes you do have conscious bias, but to the point where you are seeing things, okay, how is that a mistake? How am I having an overwhelming victory through Christ Jesus? How am I entering these fights and having an advantage already to begin with? How am I doing all these things? You're seeing all these things come to life, and you're seeing even my purpose change. My purpose was originally selfish. My purpose, all I cared about was me, and what am I going to reach my fullest potential? The whole path has now caused me to have a purpose more than just myself. It's caused me to have a purpose of including everyone around me. Like, for example, this room you're seeing right now is opened as a home cell. Home cell is like a gathering together. It's bringing many people together. And I gained zero out of it. I'm doing it because it's the right thing. I don't talk about all these things that I do all the time, whether it's looking after kids, whether it's doing kids boxings or all these things online, because it wouldn't do it any service. So all these things have changed my character, who I am, and what I desire now is to do good and to be righteous, which is right standing with God. So even if you don't believe in any of it, let's look at the net results. Let's look at the actual thing of what it does to someone's character. And we can unquestionably say what it's done for me, where I've gone from being a degenerate person trying to get girls and all these things, and gone from having a vengeful vendetta against everyone that mistreated me and stuff, and now I've gone to a person, what the enemy meant for harm, the Lord turned for good. And that's the summary of my life.
Brilliant, amazing answer once more. Obviously, alongside that, you hosting home cells and your faith in Christ. Are there any other things you get up to in your spare time?
Spare time's a funny thing because spare time, ever since my life began, there wouldn't be very much spare time. So I laugh. So if you're asking me in terms of spare things that I do in my spare time, I'm actually more simple than people give credit for. I'm not this like super duper conquest 24/7. We're gonna conquer the world, blah blah blah. I'm not some psychopath 24/7. But for me, some of the things I like to do is some special healthy things like watch some cat videos. Also, there's a game called Civilization Revolution. I used to be a big gamer, so for me, when I got super bored of gaming, I just, instead of actually buying the games, I watch Let's Plays online of them. So I usually just watch the hardest difficulty and just speed it to ×2 and we just watch it. And the Civilization Revolutions, that's a good one. Like apparently they managed to win the game at something like 2000 BC, I think. Which is crazy. 2000 BC, they're in space. Like, bizarre. But that's one of the things I tend to do in my free time. And actually, because of all the contrast, so the contrast is I'm doing things 24/7, my mind's everywhere. So the other contrast is I just have my mind totally switched off. I just go for walks. I just have some food. Maybe a bath, maybe a shower. Like that's something I yearn for a lot of the time. And God, that like honestly, it's not that complicated. So yeah.
Well, and once again, an amazing answer. I think it's pretty evident throughout this interview and the time that I've spent with you that you're a very well-spoken person. How important is it, especially in your industry, in the boxing industry, is it to be well-spoken and articulate? And do you do anything to improve your speech?
It's insanely important because you're in the people business, whether you like it or not. And people, how they understand each other's communication. Like, how did God communicate to us via His Word? And the Word became flesh, dwelt among us, and was Jesus Christ. So, in terms of how I became this well articulate spoken, you've got to first know that you are a walking bag of weapons. That's the analogy. And rather than throwing punches, you are throwing words and using all the tools at your disposal to solve the problem. So the problem is that the boxers are so amazingly good and talented, but someone wouldn't know and understand the depths unless you actually explained it. So if I explained that behind boxing, like why it's such a massive triumph, is that you are a warrior, you are betting your life on the line. And not just anything, you're betting your health, you're betting everything, you're betting your finances. Like I'll explain to you, like behind boxing, your taxes are business. If you do not sell any tickets, you can't afford to fight. You don't get enough unless you actually get to the level you are required to get to. So by British title level, if you're not on TV and other things like that, you have to pay for the opportunity for the most part to do that. And so if you do not have these talents, if you're just a normal boxer, and boxing is that, for me, boxing's a tool. Boxing is what God has used me to do. So in terms of communication, there's lots of different things. I'll break it down into components because I want people to gain value out of this. The tonality. So I can speak really loud or I can speak really, really soft. You're gonna know when it's the right time. Like emphasis. Like if you want to drive home the point, you might even use like certain hand gestures, like as you're seeing right now. You might look at someone intently and look away, then drive home the point. You might also try and direct them and give them something to envision. And also, it's something I've learned from singing is that if you want to be able to communicate effectively, you've also got to be able to protect your voice. Your voice is a muscle too, so I have to do vocal exercises, which I'm more than, if anyone's willing to message, I'm more than happy to give you the exercises. Also, you've got to have a character that's interesting. As you can see from our interview, we're not halfway through, we're not even 10 minutes way through. And I have unlimited things I can talk about, stuff I haven't even talked about in this interview, which, say for maybe a part 4 in the future or whatever, a 4-hour one, we're more than happy to talk about it. But I have unlimited examples to talk about. And also training yourself to be able to make things fun and enjoyable, because people live a life where they are going through stuff all the time and they don't see any light. They don't see a purpose to living. They don't see, why am I doing this? So being someone's light, being able to help someone, being able to appreciate someone, being able to communicate with someone and get them to feel the right kind of emotions. Like whatever you're feeling right now, like for me right now, what I'm feeling is pretty content. And so how I'm communicating, which is you communicate everything, and people either receive, like have filters so they only receive certain points. So the emotion I'm communicating is contentment. And someone watching this right now, feeling contented within themselves, will therefore, it'll translate to them wanting other emotions and wanting, because you got to understand, if you're just a boxer, imagine degrees. Imagine 2D, 3D. The more different degrees, the more possibilities. So at the end of the day, if you want more possibilities, it'll help you be a better boxer too. And I'll give you an example. My vocal training has helped me be able to breathe effectively in boxing. Because I'm able to breathe more effectively in boxing, it translates. And just as I said before, you've got to be an effective communicator. There's more aspects to that. So it's also how you breathe. Let's take a deep breath. Hello. Now I'm able to what's the word? Project. Hello. Now I'm able to be loud and intense without being intense. So there's that. There's also, like for example, improv. You can, if you have a thing like, say something funny after the other, like we'll say red, apple, bang you on the head with a red apple. Like, that's just random off the top of my head. Someone's already laughing probably, like ding, ding, ding. So if you're fun, if you have an interesting character, which all these things can be taught, if you actually care about people, if your intention's good, and people can sense intentions, so they can sense bad intentions from good, and you have things to give, people are going to want to listen to you. And as a boxer, it's going to help. And I'm not saying it just as a boxer, just as a person. At the end of the day, people matter, and you're all invaluable by definition, even by my belief system. Even if it's not your belief system, you're invaluable by definition. And we're not supposed to do things together, and we're going to fight for each other. So at the end of the day, hopefully that helps. I've got way more stuff, so if anyone wants more, message me.
Brilliant. Obviously there you touched on how important it is to be well spoken and articulate, especially of course in your industry, in boxing. But how important is it to have a well balanced and strong diet? And what was the contrast like between your previous diets before boxing and your diets now?
So I have the contrast of multiple different diets. Like for me, I've been an alkaline vegan on the Dr. Sabi diet. So for those out there, you might understand veganism, but I was that when I was 15 to like 21, I believe. But I wasn't just any average vegan. I wasn't just any average run-of-the-mill vegan. I was like hybrid foods, like spinach, no to them, and yes to kale and lots of stuff like that. Like acidic foods, no. So it's alkaline foods and all these different things, and going on water fast for 30 days. So I've been on crazy diets like that. I've also had the bodybuilding aspect. So another part of my background is originally I wanted to be an astrophysicist and a bodybuilder to realize my ultimate potential during the time. So I was bodybuilding from the ages of 7 when I first saw Conan the Barbarian. So it's just after I went to a normal primary school. I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger and I was like, I'm going to look like him. And I literally freaking meant it. So, and I decided to purposely make it as hard as possible because I already did the impossible, so we might as well go crazy with it. So to answer your question in terms of diets, I've always been strict, I've always been these different things. For me at the moment, since I'm fighting white collar, and that opens up possibilities. I'm not forced or constrained to a weight class. Well, technically I am, but at the same time, I'm mainly eating for performance base. And so if I'm blatantly honest, my diet is probably terrible at the moment. My diet is cookies, carrot cake, apple crumble, many different things. And because I'm not wasting as much energy trying to determine all these things all the time, because I'm being efficient towards the process. But I'm working on it, I'm getting it better, but I'm being honest, I'm being blatantly honest. Like, my diet is like cookies and crumble. Want to know what I had today, Thomas? I had freaking donuts. What else? Donuts and croissants, Thomas. It was freaking lovely, by the way. So if you ever go to Morrison's, donuts and croissants, there's like nice butter ones, but no, you want to get more cheaper ones sometimes, so yeah.
Brilliant. Obviously, I think you're quite an open book. You know, I've asked you a lot of questions and you've given me a lot of answers. That's for sure.
Amen to that.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I would like to know, and I think a lot of other people would like to know, what's one thing that no one knows about Jiyan Graneek?
Well, I've already just said quite a few, but you know what? Let's go even farther. Let's dig even further. Who is Jiyan Graneek, which we've already touched upon? Jiyan is endless sides. So one of the sides is I write love poems. It's for many times, and it was originally motivated to cover another different aspects. Just like I was doing other things prior to that, I writed love poems, and it used to be some of my ex-girlfriends, and then it turned to God, some love of God. So there's meaning behind every single line. Like, I remember one, and you'll see it, like the 24th Thunderous Heart, or Pilgrimage of the Thunderous Heart, that's the edit, and there's a poem underneath it, and for all of those asking, there's a meaning behind every single line. It's like the 24th Pilgrimage of the Thunderous Heart is basically talking about Valentine's Day, talking about the 24th, which is when I fought. Thunderous Heart is, well, your heart's like Valentine's Day, so it's excitable. So, you know, like heart, love, what makes love thingy excitable, so multiple different things on that. So that's one aspect of me. Another aspect is I'm an assistant salsa and bachata dance teacher. And you're probably wondering, how did I get into dance? How is this maniac getting into all these things? And to answer that question, I was looking at Lomachenko as a boxer, and I was looking at even some of the other greats, like the Cubans. Like, the Cubans were Olympic teams in boxing, and they've won. Countless generations won the Olympics. So they could only do amateur boxing ever since Fidel Castro came into power in Cuba. So basically they could only do amateur boxing because they weren't allowed to do professional. And one of the things in Cuba is it's salsa, isn't it? So I was like, all right, we're going to go find salsa, like Sonic, we're going to go and find it. And then I was called the first guy. It was like Salsa Freedom Manchester. And I was like, hey, I want to do salsa. He's asking why. I was like, well, I saw these boxers, and you know, like they did salsa too. I was like, yeah, come down. What's your name? Like, Jiyan. Oh, can I call you Jay? And I was like, yeah, sure. So Jordan, if you're watching this, he's my salsa teacher, you'll know. So came down, and absolutely loved it. Absolutely adored it. And it was on a Sunday, and I also figured out he did bachata too, which, if you want to know the difference between the two, salsa's like fun, energetic things, and bachata is like romance on steroids. So it's both interesting contrasts. But as a boxer, how this helps you is gets you into a relaxed state. It also gets you to work together as a partner base. Also gets you to change rhythm. So that's another aspect about myself that people don't know. And back when I was degenerate, another aspect is I wrote erotic novels, or one at least. So I just say I wrote erotic novels, but I don't do that anymore because you're only meant to have one wife, so it's fine. So those are some of the aspects that I did, and I'll probably end up naming more things like playing guitar. Like, if you want the link to that, I can show you that. So yeah.
Amazing. You just touched on briefly looking up to Lomachenko when it came to his, salsa ability, and obviously that got you into that whole line of things. Yeah. Would you say he's one of your favourite boxers? If not Lomachenko, who is your favourite boxer?
That's a good question, because, wait 1 second, let me just show you something. When you know as much boxing history as me, you know that there's that many guys on here. It's not just the boxers that we need to look at. We need to look at the actual trainers that trained the boxers. So if you look on here, see a guy called Sugar Ray Robinson. Who was the guy that trained Sugar Ray Robinson? It was Harry Willey. Who is Harry Willey? He comes from a line of trainers that, I believe it's Jack Blackburn, who, it was back in the days, when it was 1900s, when there was such a thing as coloured world champions. So black heavyweight world champions weren't a thing. So that same guy trained a guy called Joe Louis, which is on there, let me just find him. Brown Bonner, Joe Louis, let me just find him. There you go, Brown Bomber, Joe Louis. He fought against Nazi Germany during the time. And that Harry Willey guy was a trainer just like that Jack Blackburn that trained Joe Louis. And he trained, I believe, he was a cutman for Jack Dempsey, so he was a cutman for this guy. And he also then became a cutman for this guy. But then he also went and trained Sugar Ray Robinson, so he's the first Sugar Ray. And Sugar Ray Robinson, the reason why he's so amazing is he went, I believe, 80 fights, he won them all, had his first loss, and then went on a 90 fight win streak. And he could fight going on the back foot, he could fight going on the front foot, among many other things. And he's arguably pound for pound one of the greats. Muhammad Ali, that's the person that inspired Muhammad Ali. And funny enough, that same Harry Willey guy did train Muhammad Ali, part of it. So, to go back to that question, who's my favourite boxer? I would rather say who's my favourite trainer, because the person that installs more of what the boxers became is the trainer, is the coach. And there's fewer legendary coaches. Like, I can tell you about the coaches at my gym, for example. So my coach, he was trained by a guy called Brian Hughes. Brian Hughes was the first guy in Manchester in the UK to have cassette tapes in the UK, so he got to see the original legendary fighters. But just imagine how many people else are missing from this. So if we have to go back to, like, who's my favourite boxer, be who's my favourite trainer. And who's my favourite trainer is my coach, of course, but these are some of the guys that don't get enough justice. These are the guys that are not talked about in history enough, especially the trainers that put themselves with the fighters. So trainers and fighters are linked together. So hopefully that answers the question.
And as you were saying about the importance of coaches and trainers, I just want to sort of go into more of the fact of your own personal trainer, the one that trains you. Could you shine some light upon him and how he helps you in your fights?
I want to first off say God bless him, because without him, I'm not me. And all the credit for how skilled I am is my coaches and mine and God's. Because without one or the other, we wouldn't be in this position. So people forget, yes, my own abilities, all these different things. Without your coach, you wouldn't be there, because your coach is there through all the emotionally pivotal moments. So at times he can see things just like God beforehand, many, many years in advance. So you can see the whole process. And it's up to you as the fighter to do as you're told and to obey, just like you would obey God. So with my coach, I had a coach prior to that. He's an amazing, legendary guy too. But the coach that I now have is like an older brother to me. Like, you become inseparable in a sense. You're intertwined with one another. It's so much more than just boxing, because they get to know you on every single level. They get to know when you're hurt. They get to know when you're thinking. Like, imagine being in someone's corner. Imagine like your baby son or whatever. Like, you trained him from a certain amount of time, amount of years. You've seen him on his lows. You've seen him on his ups. You've seen him on like I'll give you an example. Like, I just got into sparring and just like completely smashed, and you're telling him, look, it's okay, all that stuff. Like, you've seen him during all these processes, all these pivotal things, and become the man he is today. A coach has a molding role that doesn't get paid enough, so I'll be honest. It's more than just that. You're taking on so many roles, so many things, being an authority figure, while also keeping a fighter's hope alive. And I can't explain to you how vulnerable fighters are. Like, before a fight, when you're watching me fighting, you're probably wondering what's going through his mind. I'll tell you exactly what's going through my mind right now. I've come to an acceptance that I might die. That's the truth. That's the truth behind it. And because every possibility is death. And you're risking your life as a warrior in this thing. And warriors, gladiators, come to an acceptance, a calm acceptance that this is the thing. Because if you don't, then it's almost a guarantee. It's a guarantee. It's like in water, that you're going to get wet. So you come to this acceptance. And the good trainers are able to influence the mind of a fighter to his core, to his belief systems of what is stripped when it matters, in those moments when he's exhausted and he's continuing to fight and he's continuing to walk to the ring. Like, he has everything to be nervous, energy, all this stuff, and he's thinking in those extreme contrasts. He's able to influence you to be a superhero. Like, the coward and the hero are the same individuals. It's just the actions they decided to take, like, and how they've decided to come to an acceptance of an emotion. But it translates to everything in life. So fighting is almost like an embodiment of life, and even boxing. Because let's say you've got a woman you want to approach, or a guy you like or something. Like, if you're like refusing to accept the possibilities, or relaxed in knowing that it could go down, but I'm going to be in the present moment and enjoy this moment for what it is and frame it in the right way, then you set yourself up for failure. So how it is like, it's important, but it's not that important. It's amazing, but at the same time, like, I'm still me, I'm good. And so, going back to the coach, without him, like, the many times that I've been trained for, I definitely wouldn't have given up, but I would have been decades behind where I need to be. Like, going at it alone is a surefire way to fail. And God commands a unity where there's blessing. So at the end of the day, and two minds are better than one. So without my coach, I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am today. Because just from those things alone, and more, and us going through struggle together, like, I'll give you an example, us finding a new building to be able to do our boxing classes and stuff. Like, at the time this recording, we're still finding that place. We're still getting that place. But the amount of struggles that boxing and a coach went together is off the charts. And I'll give you all homework, an example. Go and look at Canelo and his coach. Like, they were there since day one. And the temptations, especially getting high into this game, is so extreme that any point you can just decide not to have that, because you realize how important relationships are and that you actually need people. So hopefully that summarizes what I think about my coach.
Of course, and then obviously there you did just mention having loyalties to certain people, and obviously, of course, as you go deeper and deeper into the industry, the money gets bigger, the followers become more, and you might seem to lose yourself in all of that, and in turn, lose your friends and lose your coach and stuff like that. How important is it for you to remain loyal to these people, and what do you sort of do to build these strong connections so that you don't lose them as you progress in the industry?
I would start with a question. Like, how would you treat your own son? How would you treat your own daughter? When I started to see each person as this is someone else's son, this is someone else's daughter, and realizing the amount of years of suffering I went through, not knowing the right things, not knowing all these things, and realizing the genuine heinous evil out there of all these people that took advantage of me and other people too. Like, let me put this into a more analogy. Imagine a baby. You right now and I right now could do absolutely anything to that baby and they can do nothing about it. Did anyone do that during that time? No. Why? Because it's not right. And if you do not have boundaries, you do not have standards, and you do not involve yourself in the next generation and who the people are, you're setting not only yourself up, but you're setting that person up for failure. And everyone had that power over you at some point. Everyone. Every single person. So we start with that. Okay, people are invaluable. That's a frame, that's something that takes time for people to get to. Then understanding that not asking for anything in return, but to know it's the right thing. Let's apply it to myself. Okay, he's a boxer, he's this. Let's say I find a version of myself in the street, just clone myself. Wow, fun. So I've just cloned myself. I find maybe a year behind, or I'm looking into the future on this version. I know he's fighting for a world title one day. I know he's doing all this crazy stuff one day. I know that he's got all this burden on his shoulders. And I'm understanding to him to the best of his ability. What would be better to aid him in that moment? Having that question. Like, and actually genuinely caring and listening. And listening's a skill, just like the communication. Communication is part listening. So if you can't understand and try and put yourself in someone else's shoes, even if it's impossible, even if it's very, very hard, because I'm not a woman, so I can't understand what it means to be a woman, but I can actually try. People are actually very forgiving. So people might not know me, but at many points I've struggled at, let's say, understanding someone, understanding my mom, understanding a woman, or understanding anyone. But when people see that you're clearly trying, and you come into them genuine, and something you can't fake is saying, look, I'm struggling. I really want to understand you. You know, like, I like you as a person. I really want to understand you. Can I please have help? Like, it's going to be very difficult for someone to say, screw you. No. So, how's it important? Is you got to lead by example. So, I've set that premise. If you now know that people are invaluable, how do you then go and help people that will help you? You've got to lead. You've got to be the change in this world. If you want to see those things happen in this world, you've got to be the change in this world. So I'll give you an example. In the Bible, Judges 6, chapter 6, verse 11. I remember the verse, happy days. So it's Gideon. He's like the angel of the Lord comes to him and says, stand you mighty man of valor. So basically, mighty man of valor means you're basically a warrior, you're a man, and you got balls, which is another thing. I'll talk about the exercise in a bit. So basically, Gideon's like, what can I do, all this stuff. The Lord says, I've sent you. Go with the might that you have. So what he's basically saying is, go as you are. Like, you are the one that can see it. You right now, in your position, are more than able to solve this problem. So right now, if you're seeing, okay, there's world hunger, there's all these different things. You right now, in your present moment, can solve that freaking world hunger. And we can stop these people doing it. Do right now what you can. And trust God for the things that are impossible. Because He's the same God that parted the freaking Red Sea. He's the same God that gave freaking Samson the Holy Spirit. And then He decided with a goat's head to murder 1,000 Philistines. Sorry. So, at the end of the day, if He's the same God that can do that, and even if you don't believe in the Bible, it's still valid. You can still do it right now, can't you? And I'd rather try and fail and be on the line so to save my son and all the other sons of the planet and daughters of the planet and my daughters all the hell. I'd rather be known, okay, as a person that tried it, at least, because people will appreciate you doing that. Like, if you look at history of all the technological things, there was many people that dug the path and did the way for those people to come. There was your parents that made the path for you to exist. If no one did their part, nothing would exist, wouldn't it? So, repeat the question, please.
The question was, I believe, bear with me.
It's okay.
I believe the last question was still on holding loyalties with people close to you, and making sure that the further you go in the industry, the more everything starts to pile up on top of you. How important is it to keep them by your side?
It's the way you see things. So, if you let the opportunities move you as a wave in the water, they will almost dictate to you what you need, what you will be. But if you dictate to the waves and say to this mountain, move, and all these things, you will dictate what the outcome will be. You will influence the outcome rather than it being the outcome influencing you. It's like, I can focus on the effort or get overwhelmed by the outcome. Oh, I need to be a multi-millionaire, I need to make all this money, oh my God, blah, 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 blah. Like, I could be like that. Or I can say, here's the end result, which is loyalty, which is people, which is helping people, which is a future for people. A future that we can actually build people and actually care. A future where people won't have to go through the same crap that I went through. And whatever things you guys went through, because I'm sure guys went through worse than me, but it doesn't matter. So, if we know that needs to change, it takes the first person to do it. And what makes a man is the person that's willing to lead from the front and get absolutely freaking nothing, but it's the right thing to do. Because you are going to gain something, but is it the right thing to do? And you need a moral compass for that. And so what to determine loyalty has value, because it's what you want from other people. If you want good people around in your life, you must be that character. And the good thing about it is, birds of a feather flock together. So I want to be loyal. I want all these things. Me acting like that will bring people together. If not, inspire people to be like that more. Like, how does someone learn a certain characteristic or skill set? It's because they've been taught since birth. How did I learn all this stuff? A lot of things were taught. And so, it's also how you see things, also how you've been taught things, and also what you believe things. So, like, my beliefs on these obstacles, they become a way for me to become better. They become a forging. Like you got a blacksmith. He forges weapons. He forges using iron. And it does say in the Bible that iron sharpens iron as brother sharpens brother, or something along those lines. So at the end of the day, if you combine all those frames, you get that result. Now, I want to explain to the person that basically thinks that loyalty, like, why is loyalty important? Why are all these things important? Because people are important. Why are people important? I already started from that precedence, why people are important. But would you rather a world where people are not important? Would you rather all those things? If the answer is no, the answer is anything like that, then what would your daughter and son want? And what would your parents want? The answer is no. And you want a good world. Then even if you don't believe in it yourself, you owe it to other people to do this. Like, there's many days I'm thinking, what the frick am I doing? Why am I doing this kids' church? Why am I doing this worship singing? Why am I doing all these kids' boxing sessions? I'm not getting paid for it, I'm not getting any of this. But I look at it as, when I was that age, if I had that, how much better would have I become because of it? And that's what the question I want to leave you guys with. If you go and do the things you got to do that are genuinely going to help people, how better of people are we going to leave this world? And whether you believe in anything or not, how better are we going to do it? That's what I want to end all of you with. So God bless you all, and thank you.